Chapter 4. Emerie sat anxiously as the bidding played out. None of the items were particularly interesting to her, and all of the artworks were achingly plain. She wondered if Eric's intelligence was wrong, and she was simply wasting her time, or if this was just one cruel trick designed to give her a false hope that Eric would actually let her out of her contract. She wouldn't let herself sit with the thought for long. Eric was cruel, but he wouldn't lie to her, would he? She, who was his star pupil. She, who had become the second most respected assassin in the guild. She, the Scarlet Wraith, the name her enemies, Eric's enemies, had given her and feared. A cute girl, no older than 14, and seemingly the daughter of Meza's mayor, was standing on the stage displaying the items. The event organizers had decided to use the young lady to keep the bidders interested and spending their money as to get her attention as she handed off each product to its winner. The very idea of putting that girl up there to be ogled by these rich creeps was enough to make Emerie sick. Just as she was contemplating driving a dagger into the back of the next lavish scoundrel that stood up to claim his bid, the shimmer of a rounded jewel in the girl's hand caught her eye. Emerie's gaze was drawn to the mysterious gem as the auctioneer from before began reciting how the stone came into their possession after discovering the bodies of some poor apparent adventurers. An occasional swirl of smoky blues and reds shone from within the orb as the girl displayed it for all to see. Moxie explained to the crowd how they believed that to be remnants of the magic held within it. This was it, her target, the item she had been waiting for, the one Eric sent her here for. The one that he was going to release her for. She could hardly contain herself. She wanted to make a move now, but she knew she had to wait. See who it goes to and take it from them later, she reminded herself. She could easily storm the stage now and swipe it from that girl. Steal a horse from nearby and be back to Ephesus before dawn. But Eric made it clear to her that he wanted her to be subtle on this mission. No mess, no fuss. So she sat there and waited. She knew the rest of this would feel like an eternity. Emerie studied the crowd as Moxie began rattling off bidding prices to the patrons. There were 3 bidders tangled in a war of attrition over the gem. She figured the man in the tan robes would likely give up first. She was right. Between the last 2 bidders, she had already decided that the older one, wearing clothing that was more akin to loungewear than traveling clothes, would persist the most. Throughout her time, she had learned that men in their later years were typically more ruthless than younger ones when it came to getting what they wanted. Before the bidding was over, however, she heard shuffling behind her. It seemed as if some of the donors were getting antsy as they brushed into one another. She assumed that's all it was until she heard that scream, like one she had heard when an acquaintance of a target had discovered the victim's body. It was fear. It was pain. It was death. Something horrible was happening right behind her, but she didn't know what. Suddenly, an enormous, hulking monster with an amphibian-like appearance rushed to the center of the tent. Emerie's head lifted as the creature stared around the room, seeming to be looking for something. It appeared strangely sentient with its intentional gaze and nearly humanoid bipedal posture. The girl on the stage let out a shriek, and the creature's eyes narrowed as its head whipped around to identify her. Leaping to the stage, the monster landed just in front of the young woman, her screaming now buried by a long, shrill tone that echoed throughout the open tent. Emerie winced as the ringing continued, but just as she realized where it was coming from and what the creature was after, she was pushed by a stumbling guest behind her. "Hey, watch it!" she demanded, but after just one glance at this man, eyes glazed and mouth gaping with a trail of drool, she knew he would not hear. Something was terribly wrong. The ringing echoed on. Suddenly, a different scream. Another man, just a few feet from her, had collapsed. His body was seizing and convulsing as foam and blood began to seep from his lips. She had to hold in her own shriek. She had watched people die before. She had seen someone die in this exact way to a very particular poison that Eric liked to stock with his assassins. But that poison takes effect quickly, and the man hadn't been drinking anything. Nor had she witnessed anyone walk by that could have injected him with it. A hidden dart, maybe? No, she decided quickly. Something else. But what? What had caused this man to suddenly die in such a bizarre and awful way? Another scream. More, as a roaring cacophony of people began to exit their seats and run out of the tent in a frenzy. As Emerie scanned the tent, she slowly stepped back before bumping into someone once more. She was disoriented, but she had just determined that no one was near her, save for the man on the ground. She looked back. The man's corpse was gone. Only a small pool of blood remained where his face had been lying just seconds ago. Behind her, the person she walked into, was the very same man, eyes now glowing faintly and strained with blood as he groaned through the liquid still foaming from his mouth. He was the definition of a dead man walking. She shoved him over the chairs as he attempted to grapple her, tearing herself away from the cold grip of the falling corpse. The mayor's daughter continued to struggle as the monster carried her, along with the magic orb, still ringing, through the frantic audience. Emerie noticed the golden-scaled dragonkin fighting off two more of the twisted bodies on the other side of the room. His fists were moving swiftly and assuredly into their terrible forms. She couldn't bring herself to her innocence, even if they might already be dead. It felt too disrespectful. And if they somehow were still alive, she didn't want to cross that line and be the one to kill them. That dragonkin, though, he was incapacitating those people without a second thought. His commitment to his actions seemed almost brutal, and he was sporting something of a toothy smile, like he was enjoying himself. "I'm coming!" Emerie shouted to the girl on the stage. Her words were drowned by the impossible resonance of the orb. Emerie gazed upon the girl on the monster's shoulders. Her eyes shared a similar faint glow as the man she had fought off just a moment ago. She appeared to still be more cognizant than the others, however, as if whatever had been afflicting the members of the crowd hadn't quite taken her over yet. It was like she was in a trance, staring into the buzzing orb with no more concern for the beast that was carrying her through the chaos. "Hey, you!" Emerie called to the dragonkin, who glanced down at her, an expression of frustration on his face, like he had been interrupted somehow. "Cover your ears! It's the sound!" she relayed while pointing at her ears and then back to the girl in the center. She hoped she was right as she pulled her hood over her head and wrapped a belt around her ears to dampen the sound. Just then, a pair of massive blue wings and a short man in robes burst into the tent. Before she blinked, an arrow flew past her and hit the man behind her in the shoulder, knocking him back to the ground. The birdman held his bow up, showing it off, as if she should be impressed or like he was expecting her to thank him. She instead used both hands to point to the belt and hood around her ears and then once more to the monster and the girl walking through the center. The eagle looked towards them and, to Emerie's shock, knocked an arrow, aiming directly for the girl. "No!" she shouted, but before she could get the bird's attention, he had already sent the arrow flying, causing the monster to jump to the ceiling, grabbing onto a support rail that was hung across the top of the tent. The girl never took her eyes away from the orb. The assassin knew this was the work of magic. The glow in the girl's eyes and the endless, painful ringing. That must be it, the orb. And this blue buffoon had just sent her target into panic mode, causing him to leap all over the tent. If it were to escape with the stone, she thought to herself. The bird and the robed man turned their attention to the ceiling. The bird had another arrow ready, but the man, he was just holding a hand out. What was he intending to do? In a flash, a beam of red light erupted from the man's palm, blasting a hole in the canvas of the tent. Magic. Actual, powerful, attack magic. She read once that some people could harness magic energy to create a blast like that, but she had never witnessed anything like it herself. She didn't have time to think about that now, however. Her target was on edge, so she needed to focus and retrieve the stone before he got away. The creature leapt once more, this time directly to the exit. "Shit!" Emerie exclaimed. It couldn't go this way. Not now. Her life, the one she had wanted for so long, was quickly eluding her. She sprinted toward the opening of the tent, hoping to catch the monster and claim the orb before it escaped. The dragonkin met her there and roared, blasting a breath of flames at the creature. Almost as if it was moving on pure instinct, the monster ran with the girl straight through the fire and out of the tent with a mighty leap away as it reached the exit. "No, no, no, no!" she screamed in her head. She had to get that orb, but before the dragon and the elf could leave, however, they were blocked by a small entourage of volunteer guards. "What are you doing? Get out of the way!" Emerie furiously screamed at the men, her voice breaking. "That monster took that poor girl and is going to get away!" She was, of course, worried about the girl, but in this moment, she was even ashamed to admit it to herself. She was more focused on the orb. Her future was slipping through her fingers. The dragonkin roared again. It seemed like he was prepared to kill the men to get through, and was fighting with himself not to. Emerie turned around to see that the chaos had settled. 4 bodies lay on the ground, a small fire eating away at the edges of the tent, and that birdman. That damned birdman. This was his fault. If he hadn't fired that arrow, she would have been able to swipe the artifact from her target. "You!" the assassin growled as she stepped towards the winged man. "What in the hells was that? You ruined everything! My one shot at freedom! The one opportunity I had to take control of my life! You took that from me. And firing at that child? I hope you can live with yourself, because if you can't, I'd be more than happy to skin you right here and sell your meat on the black market. The bird stared blankly. For a moment, she wasn't even sure he had understood what she said. I'm sorry, he said sarcastically after a moment. I was busy saving your life. Maybe if you had been watching your back, I could have gone for the girl and that monster first, he retorted. Almost instantly, the assassin drew a dagger, and within seconds, 2 men were grabbing her arms and shouting that no one was leaving the tent. Let me go! The elf cried out as she fought back tears. I'm going to kill you! She continued screaming. Do you hear me? You took away my future, my life. That girl is going to die because of you! The bird angled his eyes and only glared back at her as she kicked and thrashed between the guard's arms. I hate you! She shrieked. They were all to be placed under arrest, and an investigation was being launched into what had just occurred in the tent that night.